China is among the world's oldest civilizations. According to Chinese scholars, it may be 5,000 years old. The earliest known written records cover a period of China's history that spans at least 3,500 years. Many scientific discoveries and inventions come from China, including gunpowder, compass, paper, and printing. Before the 19th century, China was one of the world's most advanced nations and the main cultural center of East Asia. It withstood multiple colonial conquests that lasted centuries, but each time it rose up stronger than ever, establishing itself as an independent industrial state. To simplify China's history, we will break it down into stages, based on traditional Han historiography. Pre-imperial China, which includes Xia, Shang, and Zhou dynasties until 221 BC. Imperial China, Qin dynasty and the Great Qin. And modern China, from 1911 to present day. According to legend, China was founded by 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors. They are believed to be the ancestors of the entire Chinese nation. Some of these mythical heroes taught the people of China how to build houses, while others taught them how to grow crops. The Xia dynasty from 2070 to 1600 BC is the earliest dynasty that we know of. It occupied the western part of the modern Hunan province and the southern part of the modern Shaanxi province. During this period of slavery, 2 more dynasties emerged: the Shang dynasty from 1600 to 1027 BC and the Western Zhou from 1064 to 770 BC. The Spring and Autumn period from 771 to 481 BC and the Warring States period from 475 to 221 BC were characterized by a decline in the influence and power of the ruling house, as well as power struggles between regions. This was a transitional period from slave owning to feudal society. During it, the Chinese invented the technology for smelting bronze. Iron tools became available to the general public during the reign of the Shang dynasty, 3,000 years ago. The Warring States period was also a period of enlightenment. Philosophers like Lao Tzu, Confucius, Meng Tzu, Mozi, and San Wu, the author of The Art of War, became popular during that era. In 221 BC, Qin Shi Huang, the first China's emperor, put an end to the rivalry among the independent feudal principalities during the Warring States period, which lasted more than 250 years, and established a unified multi-ethnic feudal state, the Qing dynasty. He established uniform standards of weights and measures and created a system of counties. Over decades, he united more than 300,000 people to build the Great Wall of China, which is over 8 kilometers long and passes through the entirety of northern China. At the beginning of his reign, Qin Shi Huang started construction of a huge mausoleum, the Terracotta Army, which was discovered by archaeologists in 1974. The terracotta figures of warriors, chariots and horses from the underground army that stood guard for many centuries stunned the entire world. The Qin Empire lasted only 14 years and then fell due to an uprising. An official named Liu Ba led one of the rebel groups. In 207 BC, his forces seized the capital, and the Qin dynasty had been overthrown. In 206 BC, he founded the new Han dynasty, which lasted until 220 AD. The Han dynasty gave rise to China's largest ethnic group, the Han Chinese. The invention of paper and ink, as well as the establishment of trade relations with Western countries, are rightly considered the main advancements of this era. The Great Silk Road was formed. After the Han dynasty came the Three Kingdoms period, from 220 to 280 AD, the Jin Empire, from 264 to 420 AD, Northern and Southern dynasties, from 420 to 589 AD, and the Sui dynasty, from 581 to 618 AD. The Tang dynasty was a golden age of Chinese civilization. It lasted from 618 to 904 AD, and during it, the trade and cultural relations with Europe and neighboring countries like Japan, India, Persia, and Korea strengthened dramatically. The state developed powerful educational, political, and legal systems. After the Tang dynasty, China was thrust into a period of continuous warfare, known as 5 dynasties and 10 kingdoms. In the 13th century, the country was first conquered by the Mongol, and then by the Manchurian people, Emperor Kublai, Genghis Khan's grandson, founded the Yuan dynasty that lasted until 1368. Rebellions broke out in 1350s, and one of the leaders of the rebels, Zhu Yuansheng, became the new ruler of China and founder of the Ming dynasty. Under the Ming emperors, China became prosperous and powerful again. However, they became increasingly self-centered and wanted to isolate China from the outside world. Perhaps the Mongol rule increased their distrust of foreigners and their dislike of outside influences. The emperors were determined to limit contact with Europeans. The period of prosperity in Chinese history ended in the early 17th century. In the 1630s, the Ming rule began to crumble. China was struck by famine and epidemics. Revolts broke out and the government was unable to suppress them. In 1644, the last Ming emperor committed suicide. Meanwhile, by the end of the 16th century, China's northern neighbors, the Manchurians, stopped paying tribute and began increasing military pressure on the northern borders. The House of Aisin-Jiro founded a dynasty in 1616 named the Great Qing, which means pure. The dynasty ruled until 1911, with their main focus being on isolationism. Trade with Europeans was abolished in the mid-18th century, with the exception of one port in Canton. The island of Macau continued to remain under Portuguese control. The Europeans wanted China's goods, like silk, porcelain, tea, etc. But China was reluctant to trade, so the British started importing opium. Smoking became a real disaster for China and led to a series of so-called Opium Wars in the middle of the 19th century, which the empire lost. As a result, Hong Kong was ceded to Britain and they were allowed to trade in Chinese ports. In 1911, the Wuchang Uprising broke out, which resulted in the Xinhai Revolution. The Manchu dynasty was overthrown and the Chinese Republic was established. On February 12, 1912, the Emperor Puyu abdicated the throne. General Yuan Shikai, the Prime Minister and Commander-in-Chief, was appointed president. Mongolia and Tibet separated from China. After the revolution, the Chinese People's Party was founded. Chiang Kai-shek, elected chairman of the Kuomintang, launched the so-called Northern Campaign that resulted in him gaining control over almost the entire territory of China. In the fall of 1931, Japan attacked China. Manchuria became a puppet state ruled by the Emperor of the Manchu Empire. On July 7, 1937, Japan declared war on China. Chinese historians consider this date to be the beginning of World War II. Japan wanted to conquer China completely. Things took a worse turn with internal disputes between the Kuomintang and the Communist Party. The civil war in China continued even after Japan's defeat. Armed forces of the Communist Party, led by Mao Zedong and supported by the Soviet Union, liberated all of mainland China from the Kuomintang by the end of 1949. On October 1, 1949, Mao Zedong proclaimed the People's Republic of China. Chiang Kai-shek fled to Taiwan, which was still formally referred to as the Republic of China. In 1958, China proclaimed a new course known as the Great Leap Forward, which further developed into the Cultural Revolution from 1966 to 1976. It was later described by the Communist Party as turmoil that brought serious disasters to the party, the state, and the entire people. After Mao's death in 1976, power in the country passed into the hands of the reformers led by Deng Xiaoping, who in late 1978 proclaimed a policy of reform and openness, a course towards a socialist market economy. In the following years, China managed to develop high rates of industrial production and GDP growth by an average of 9.5% per year, and significantly raised living standards. These reforms were continued by Deng Xiaoping's successors, Jiang Zemin since 1989, Hu Jintao since 2002, and Xi Jinping since 2012. Modern China is one of the developed countries of the world that has boldly entered the 21st century, the era of technological progress. But the Chinese still honor their ancient history and uphold the customs and traditions established by their ancestors.